Steve Jobs, genius, visionary, dickhead. I mean, you said
No.
Summed it up.
No. Fucking asshole.
Cold-hearted motherfucker.
Piece of shit.
No
Wow.
good for nothing.
no good Nick.
Bug-eyed heathen.
Oh, Bishop. Yeah, man. And if you've read anything about Steve Jobs or know anything about him, he instantly became, I mean, everybody knew about Steve Jobs, but I mean, the public in general just became infatuated with him after his death in 2011 when he had pancreatic cancer, excuse me. And this movie doesn't cover all of that. This movie covers him from 1971 when he was on the verge of forming Apple to 2001 when he introduced the iPod. And it's man, this is a movie where I didn't want to go in feeling this way. I did not want to go in feeling this way at all. But half of it is the movie that I thought it could be, and it was. And then the next half was Steve Jobs' greatest hits. You know what I mean?
It was.
Or it was a PowerPoint of everything that you already kind of know about him. It's like watching dinner theater. Let's play out the key things that you've heard, like the bullet points about his life.
It was Steve Jobs, the movie for dummies. That's kind of what it was. You know?
It's funny. Before going in, talking with Cyrus, he said, like, well, I heard it's not as bad as you think it's going to be. And I was like, dang. I see. And we were just talking. We were like, okay, look, it's either going to be a biopic that's honest about what an asshole he is, which is kind of too soon since he just died not that long ago, or it's going to be a big commercial for Apple products. And this movie turned out to be both.
Yeah, it really did. I was like, who wrote the script? Bill Gates?
Yeah. Well, that's why the whole time watching, I'm like, who is this aimed at? Because it's not flattering to him whatsoever
At all. Yeah.
But it sure does pump up Apple and how great that is. So I'm like,
Well, they did the right thing by showing the asshole side of him, because that was a big fear of this movie. Because like I said, Steve Jobs even, I mean, there was a point where even he was like, yeah, I got $1 billion. I was a dickhead. So what?
He came out.
I'm rich enough not to give a fuck.
He came out of the asshole closet. That's me.
But it was like, hey, you know what? If I get rich, I'm not going to change. You know why? Because I'm an asshole.
If you got hate in your heart, let it out.
You talking about coming out the asshole closet? He came down with no pants on, ass cheeks spread, ass first. I mean, and look, they did the right thing, because this is what they didn't want to do. They didn't want to glorify Steve Jobs. They wanted to show the real Steve Jobs and the things that were very controversial about his life. Again, no spoilers here. It's all out there about him. He's known for ripping people off famously. Like I said, if you know anything about his life, his partner Steve Wozniak, when Steve Jobs was working for Atari, they made Breakout. Steve Jobs got paid $5,000 for it. Steve Wozniak, who
Did
helped
all
him
the
out,
work.
did most of the work. Yeah, he got paid $350 for it, covered in the movie. Steve Jobs had a problem with his girlfriend when he got her pregnant, and totally dismissed her when she needed him, and and disowned his daughter.
Yep.
Or neglected his daughter, and that's covered in the film. There's a lot of
DNA tests, that ain't real.
Yeah, that ain't ever going to be real.
Well, hey, look, if you said 5% margin of error, that's it. I'm free. I'm out. It ain't me.
I love the way he played that too, because they said that Steve Jobs. Now, another thing about the movie here is that another area of controversy is who they had to play Steve Jobs. Everybody said Ashton Kutcher. Guy was made to play Steve Jobs. If you see him with bushy hair, he looks like a young Steve Jobs.
He does.
And so they called him in there. And you know what? Let's just get that out the way. I thought Ashton Kutcher, he did a good job. I'm not going to say great, but I thought he did a very good job at it. And I love that part where they're trying to say, he has a lawyer in there saying, Steve, this is your daughter, all right? We taking tests, and he's like, Steve, we got the DNA evidence. No, not mine.
That technology doesn't exist until I make it.
When you bring me the eye pregnancy test,
iDNA.
we'll know.
But I mean, the thing, I thought Ashton Kutcher was okay. Wow. There are moments though,
Man,
and I'm being nice. I'm being really nice though, because there are plenty of moments in here where it seems like he's doing more of an SNL skit playing Steve Jobs than anything else. I mean, but I don't know. I think only because the movie at times it caught me off guard because it would introduce things that I was hoping the movie would really get into, more like his successes, the people that he had to deal with in his life, even like introducing a scene with Bill Gates where you're wondering like, oh, okay, he's yelling at Bill Gates. Maybe this is going to evolve into something else, a subplot that is going to be interesting for once, that something I know about, but no, and that doesn't happen. And that's my biggest problem with this film, is that it gets you into so many subplots with the people in his life that the film forgets to address those anymore as soon as they're introduced.
I know. Weren't you waiting for McLovin to come in and be Bill Gates?
Yeah.
you never saw that. Well, see, that's the thing. The movie, to me, is split in two parts. I really was enjoying the part where Steve Jobs, played by Ashton Kutcher, was having to get his company, was having to fight for his company. He was working out of his garage. It's funny because the movie was directed with a certain creative flair. These stories were developed. It's almost like an origin story for a superhero or something. I mean, where you had this character that was hungry. The movie seemed hungry too, and seemed to actually have some drive. Seemed to have some a very imaginative approach to its storytelling. And once Apple is formed as a company, as a successful company, that's when it starts giving you all these subplots that they don't follow through on. You're right. There's a scene where Bill Gates hears that, Steve Jobs hears that Bill Gates has ripped his operating system off. And he gets on the phone and says, "I'm going to sue you, Bill Gates." And we're like, oh, it's going to get good.
Yeah.
Don't ever come back to that.
Not at all. Or the biggest one, dealing with his daughter. I mean, they really did lay that out there, that this guy was neglecting the fact that he actually he got someone pregnant and had a daughter with it. And right when you think that's going to be a big part of maybe redeeming this guy just a little bit, they don't bother to go into it at all. But we do see a scene later on in the movie where we're like, okay, who is this girl and how does it? Wait,
they're all
hold
reconciled and nothing.
There's nothing really. Yeah, there's nothing explained, and I think everyone in the audience was kind of confused, because I know a lot of people, when they walked out of the theater, they were confused about that one part of the film.
Yeah, man, I don't know. Maybe we saw a different movie. I didn't see a half that I thought was great or even good. I mean, that first half, I suppose I was giving it a pass because it was building itself up. You're like, all right, let's give it a chance. I was like, okay, it's trying to show this guy as a hippie full of wonderment and how he decided to get serious. But the whole time I kept going, why should I care about this? I mean, it's a bunch of guys building computers. The main character is completely unlikable, and there's never a redeeming point to him. As a matter of fact, the movie seems to be all about how he had no problem screwing over people, but we're supposed to root for him when it's done to him.
I'm leaving Apple. For good. Actually, I already did. I thought I should come back and tell you first.
Why?
We both knew this was coming for some time. I don't even remember the last time we talked.
What do you want from me, then?
Not everyone has an agenda, Steve.
Right.
You know, I can still remember when we were just kids, back in your dad's garage. We just wanted to create cool toys for people like us. You remember that?
Yeah.
No, it's not about people anymore for you. No, it's about the product. Worst of all, it's about yourself. You're the beginning and end of your own world, Steve. And it's so small.
And I was like, I don't care, dude. I mean, this is your karma. Don't come bitching to me now after you've gone out of your way to screw all the guys who helped you get where you are.
Do you think they'll ask you to root for him? I mean, because I think the movie.
I think the movie.
You know what? I guess you can't say that.
It makes a big point of when Apple has to ask him back, it's all like, yeah, and now he gets to get revenge on these guys that screwed him. It's like, yeah, dude. But he screwed a lot of people to get there. And the people who even came back to him, try to help him, he screws them. It's all about him screwing people.
And you know what? You're right. I mean, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You gonna finish something? Go ahead.
But also, Ashton Kutcher, he's the least talented actor in this. And I didn't go into this going like, man, Ashton Kutcher sucks. I was like, hey, man, give him a chance. You know, sure, he's on that 70s show. He might be able to pull it off. And I'm watching it. I'm like, yeah, it's like he's got only 2 speeds. And he seems to be slightly smirking through all of them. The ones where he has to emote and yell at people, it's like, I believe it for a second. And then by the time he's done with the scene, it's like, I didn't believe that. That didn't come through at all.
The first time he does it, when he actually gets pissed off at somebody with that notorious Steve Jobs, how he treats people, you know, it does come off where you're like, wow, okay, this really is working. He's making me feel like, man, it would not be fun to be in a room with him. The second time it happens, it's like he's repeating the same beats, like the same performance almost. He's like using what he had in the other scene, and it just comes off as like bad theater in a way the second time around.
It does. And the thing is, I don't know who wrote or directed this, but it's like
I told you, Bill Gates. Yeah.
It was Joshua Michael Stern, who I think is the movie that you might recognize that he did was Swing Vote, which was another kind of mediocre.
Yeah, it felt so TV movie. It's way too long, and the story is really ultimately like it's like going like, oh wow, I always thought okay, Steve Jobs was a dick, but he created all this stuff. It's like, no, he didn't. He just yelled at other people until they created the stuff that he thought of. But it seemed like it came across to me like he didn't really do anything other than get mad and act like a petulant teenager.
In his defense, they couldn't cover a lot of things, but he was the force behind a lot of things that happened at Apple.
Okay.
Yeah, he was the guy who was really pushing people from not doing just what they could. He was really excellent at pushing people to put the product that he really wanted people to have.
Well, I get that. Like he had a vision, and everybody else is like, well, we can't really do that. He was like, no, stop thinking like that. Everybody get together and do this. But it was like, when you came down to it, it's like, well, we can't do that because it's going to cost too much and it'll bankrupt the company. And as it turned out, they were kind of right.
No, they weren't right. He said if you don't price these computers at this and sell it at a lower price, then you can push more units, and they didn't listen to him. And when they didn't listen to him, that's when they took him out.
But can I tell you though? Let me stop you right now, because this is what's going to happen with a lot of people who are going to see this movie. Like, I didn't really know all that much about Steve Jobs until after I saw this movie, and I was like, I know they put out like a few documentaries or small documentaries on Netflix, and I went and checked out several of them actually. And what frustrated me more about this film is the fact that those documentaries covered some really interesting things that I'm shocked that the movie didn't take liberties in bringing up. I mean, the movie itself opens up with the invention of the iPod, the product that really catapulted Apple into the business that they are now. And the fact that they didn't even try to, make that a part of its story, even though it begins, it really sets it up. They start out with it,
but I was going to mention is that they start out with the iPod. And they when they show they play all this glorious music and everything, and they don't ever come back to that.
No, not at all.
Right, they don't book in the movie at all with that.
And just making him feel more like a human being, because this movie really does villainize him. It makes him into a monster. The fact that they didn't get into the relationship that he had with Bill Gates, this love-hate relationship that these two guys really had, with each other. The fact that the movie points out that when Steve Jobs was booted from Apple, and then he came back. I was shocked that the movie didn't bother to mention the fact that Bill Gates actually helped him out, like he helped him build up Apple, when he got rehired, and I was like, wow, that's such a great, crazy relationship. That would have been so interesting to see them get into, and the movie just wants to forget about it.
You're right about that, man. Yeah. And you know what?
It's flat. Like, okay, it makes me think back to like The Social Network, which is about a bunch of computer geeks doing stuff. Like, you take that story, it's not that interesting, but you get David Fincher directing it and Aaron Sorkin writing dialogue. It becomes an interesting movie.
Exactly. That's what this movie needed. Yeah.
I think Aaron Sorkin is making a Steve Jobs movie.
Somebody has to.
Yeah, they need to. They really do.
And that's what everybody's saying. I think everybody's kind of doing it like, okay, you got your thing right here. We'll wait for this other movie. We'll wait for the real shit to come out. But you know what? Don't get me wrong. For what you're saying here, and you're saying that he did this, but he didn't do that, and why is he getting credited for this? Co-host is right. You're seeing part of a story. You're seeing you are watching a movie. Yeah. And what you get from that movie is going to influence how you see this person. And the movie didn't do a good job at that. And the reason why is because what you're saying about you're supposed to feel sympathy for him, At first, I was thinking, well, maybe not. Maybe they're leaving it up to the audience to make. No, that's not right, because every time during the second half of the movie, every time he started talking about something at Apple, that music would swell up.
Oh yeah,
and it was, it was a commercial, because he would come in, he would just walk in a room and say, "You, give me a motivational speech right now about Apple. You, give me a motivational monologue about Apple." And that character that he's talking to, they would go on for a 5-minute speech, and the music would play, and it would just be Steve Jobs, and just saying,
At the end of the movie, you see him talking into a microphone about, the whole greatness of technology and how people are supposed to feel, how it's supposed to be an extension of people. Well, you're like, I feel like I'm watching a fucking Apple commercial right now, a very bad one at that.
Yeah, and if the goal is for you to go like, you're right, it's because of this guy. I have this phone right now. I can do all these amazing things. How wonderful he is. I'm like, you know what? If this movie's not gonna get better, I'm just gonna go start playing Angry Birds on my phone.
It did feel like cheap Apple propaganda.
Either I'm like, okay, either this is made for, if you somebody who worships at the church of Apple, hey, this is the movie for you.
It is.
But if you're somebody who thinks, man, karma must be real because Steve Jobs is dead, and this is it. And you're like, wow. You get to the end of this movie, I was like, man, fuck this guy. I hope he dies of cancer.
You know what? I honestly, I can't blame you. I don't blame you at all.
He's just sort of evil throughout this entire movie.
He really is, and that's the fault of the filmmaker and the writers.
It's funny because there's a point where, again, if anybody knows anything about Apple, there's a rock star designer at Apple, head designer and senior vice president, Jonathan Ive. And there's a part where you come in and you see a young Jonathan Ive. And Steve Jobs comes in and he says, "You, what's your name? Why do you work here?" And that guy goes on for about 10 minutes. Design should be like this, and I believe this about creativity. And that music is
I know. Man, shut up. I know. I was like, settle down, Junior. Don't suck his dick so hard to keep your job.
And the movie is heavy-handed too. There's a part where Steve Jobs is so disgusted with the technology that led up to him making an iPod. You see him take a portable CD player, and he's like, harumph, and he throws it in the trash. He's walking away. This is garbage.
Another scene where you think, okay, this is where we get into the iPod, the invention of the iPod. Steve Jobs is so pissed off at his Walkman. He's like, this motherfucker can't work right until I make it. And nope. Do we get that? No.
I love how we dealt with CD players that skipped or didn't, but he's the one guy to where nope, this shall not stand.
They said shit in the woods and shoot it. Man.
But he's like the guy, like, you couldn't be friends with this guy. He's like one of those guys where if you were friends with him long enough, he's gonna fuck you over at some point.
He's an opportunist.
He's an opportunist. He's either gonna not pay you what he should, or make sure you got fired. Like, not step in the way to not keep you from getting fired, but make it his mission to fire you in the most embarrassing way and leave you going like, man, I fucking brought you in on this. What,
Leon? I'm sorry, but there's a reason why people say nice guys finish last.
Yes.
And how did he finish right now?
He made a shitload of money. I mean,
I actually said that too. I was like, damn, this guy got away with a bunch of. He got cancer. It's like, you know how many people are like, damn, wishes do come true. But you know what? I don't even mean that, man, because what I think this movie, where it failed, is that it succeeded at showing you the dark side of this person, this real life figure, but it did not succeed at showing you the other side of him. Not even saying that he was a great guy, but it just showed him, as you said, just as an asshole, an opportunist, and somebody that would just rip people off. And that's not the whole story.
Sure.
And there are some performances in here that do stand out. I mean, like I said, I like Ashton Kutcher, but I think Josh Gad as Steve Wozniak was pretty. I mean, when he was with Ashton Kutcher, he acted circles around him.
Well, that's the problem. It's like, I don't put down any of the performances except Ashton Kutcher's. And one of the reasons his stood out as being bad was everybody else around him was so good, especially the guy playing Steve Wozniak. Although it's kind of messed up that Steve Wozniak had to get screwed over by Steve Jobs in real life. And in this movie, Steve Jobs is played by matinee idol Ashton Kutcher. Steve Wozniak gets this like unknown fat dude. I bet Wozniak is going like, come on again.
Well, did you look at the picture of the actual guy? It's
I know,
like,
what
it
you
didn't
want
seem
Leonardo DiCaprio to play?
No,
No,
at the end, they
werewolf mask.
they found the photos that look the most. I've seen plenty of pictures of Steve Wozniak where he is not that fat.
Well,
He's rotund, but he's not like that guy.
well,
Yeah.
yeah. You need to look. You need to look at that picture again.
I'm saying they found that one
robust.
picture that they could turn from a certain angle and go like, I was like, come on.
Now you making Josh Gad feel like shit, man.
Hey, he's gonna play Sam Kinison. He'll be all right.
Oh, another
Got more
fat
money
guy.
than I do. Yeah, another fat dude. I thought Dermot Mulroney, who plays Mike Markula, who was one of Apple's earliest investors. He was the investor that incorporated them and got them off the ground. I thought he was all right.
Too bad for him. No good deed goes
Too bad for
unpunished.
everyone.
I will say this: they tried to show older Steve Jobs at the beginning of the movie by having Ashton Kutcher wear a gray beard and some gray hair, and he looked like a baby with a fake beard on, that big ass forehead.
Like he was wearing a baby mask from the Spirit Halloween story.
Had a fucking little nest of a hairpiece on top of it. I'm like, no, this ain't working.
Johnny Knoxville have that on in one of the Jackass movies.
Yeah, I'm like, no, this ain't working, man. Half of the movie was pretty cool. In the second half of the movie, I got to thank Steve Jobs for giving me an iPhone so I could check and see throughout the movie when this was going to end. So I'm giving this a kind of a stale matinee. Yeah. I mean, I'm not matinee. What the fuck am I talking about? No. I'm giving this a rental, man. Just
Okay.
plain old, stale old rental.
Yeah, you talk about taking his sweet time. There was a point where it was an hour in. Well, no, it was an hour in, and on the screen, it was only just now getting to 1977. I was like, holy fuck, we still got 30 years to go.
I know. It's like, God damn it. I know. I was like, when is the invention of the iPad supposed to?
Honestly, outside of the performances of almost everybody else except Ashton Kutcher, that was just nothing for me to enjoy in this movie. I really was like, I don't even know why I'm watching this. I don't understand what this is trying to say, other than Steve Jobs sucks, go Apple. If this is a movie for the current Apple employees who are all worried that like things are gonna go down now that Steve Jobs is gone, and it's their way of going like, hey, look, it wasn't so great when he was here, and we're still good, guys. So stay in there. Sure, that's fine for them, but for me, it just skates being some old bullshit to be a low rental.
Wow, it worries me for any Apple employee to be watching this film right now, because you realize how much that company was going to go, like, crashed and burned almost. You know, the one line I did like was like, when they try to get Steve Jobs back, it's like, do I want to get tickets to the Titanic? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, for the movie for what it was, it did bring up some things that I never knew about Steve Jobs, and I was like, all right, I guess the movie's sort of doing its job yet. Like I said, you can see plenty of documentaries right now on Netflix that tell that story a lot better, and it'll make you frustrated just realizing how much this movie really skipped out on some genuine, like, just, great moments to have in a film, especially with the rivalries between, Microsoft and Apple. But other than that, Ashton Kutcher, I thought he was okay. And like I said, I'm being really nice. I mean, there were some scenes that when I thought, okay, this guy, he's doing a good job. But other than that, it's just a rental for me. And that's too bad, because this movie had a lot of potential to be just a great film.
Yeah. Wait and watch this shit on your iPad.
Yeah.